Hello and welcome to this week's myNewsWrap. News from the SAP area, the Microsoft area, and the world in between. Okay, so let's dive into the news. What has happened in the last week? First of all, as you all know, Sapphire Now is around the corner. And Tobias Hoffmann wrote a little blog post about his personal wish list for Sapphire. In the area of, well, there are 14 wishes. I think that there are quite some around announcements and refinements, for example, for SAP Rise, or for announcements around the free tier for BTP, or reshaping or enriching the BTP with a business application platform layer for building business applications and how to deliver apps. So quite interesting stuff. Some, from my perspective, more cultural stuff and like learning and feedback culture at SAP. I think there is some room for improvement. But also some clarifications, for example, around the area of no code. I would hope that there comes something up. Well, if you're interested, there are 14 points to read. I think all are valid. And I will keep a checklist what will be announced, refined, clarified during Sapphire Now with respect to this absolutely valid wish list. With that, let's switch to the business technology platform. Marius Obert brought another blog post in his series Cloud Native Lab about multi-tenant apps on SAP Business Technology Platform, Cloud Foundry environment, where he describes a bit about multi-tenancy in general, and then highlights how can you do multi-tenant apps in the SAP BTP trial. And that's quite useful read if you are in the area, if you're working with Cloud Foundry, because it's not super straightforward, but this blog post can really help you there. Then there was one kind of a service announcement around the what's new section for SAP BTP on the SAP Help portal on help.sap.com. There have been quite some new features within the portal that support the usability with respect to drilling down to the relevant components that you want to check, to the relevant capabilities that you want to take a look at. And that's shortly described within this blog post. I think it's a step forward, making this thing more usable. However, having said that, I also had the chance to take a look at the Microsoft 365 counterpart of this thing for searching for some news on Teams. And I think SAP should kind of also take a look there, because this is really, from my perspective, first-class usability. And this is now good usability. But there is still room for improvement when it comes to checking what's new, what's coming up, because you can also include unscheduled items there. And I think there are not filled yet, at least not in the sections that I looked at. Then I wanted to highlight the OpenSAP podcast that was formerly about SAP Cloud Platform. That's now called SAP Integration and Extension Talk, because that's kind of the core or the pendant of SAP Cloud Platform now in the SAP BTP terminology. And I think they're really reviving it and trying to push out now high quality content on a regular basis, which was not the case in the past. And there is now one new episode about the kind of not really big announced pay-as-you-go model for BTP, and also for the functionalities around CI and CD on Business Technology Platform. Then there is another webinar series that is announced now that's called SAP BTP Garage series. Episode 1 is coming out about extending business processes on 5th of May. You can register for that. No idea how the quality will be. No idea if it's only for let's say high-level insights, or if it goes more into technical depth. the who should attend section in the announcement is not really conclusive, let's put it that way. So let's see how this thing will evolve and how future episodes will maybe cover different areas or go more into depth. Then to the cloud application programming model, there is one blog post that I would like to highlight because this one describes the real usage of the SAP Cloud Application Programming Model in an industry cloud app. So how a partner really used the CAP model in order to build an app on top. I think on top on an S4 or ECC system, bringing together several other components like Azure for geospatial requirements. So that's quite interesting how they use it and what use cases they cover with it. Then let's switch to the Kyma area. So some news from Kyma. There is one really cool code talk with Jamie Cawley, who is product manager of the Kyma runtime. It's a 10-minute talk. So, but if you want to get some insights into Kyma, perhaps you're starting the journey, then that's a really great starting point because Jamie gives a cool overview over the things. Then there is one announcement that thankfully Marco Dorn highlighted because the title, I think, gets the award most misleading title ever. It's extending SAP SuccessFactors S/4HANA Cloud Marketing Cloud with a trial account in SAP Business Technology Platform. Now, the point is, you can now pair those systems with your trial account on SAP Business Technology Platform, which means they are accessible to Kyma now, because that's kind of the basic prerequisite to have your systems in the system landscape and in the foundation area in order to get them available within Kyma. So maybe some Kyma in the title would have been quite helpful. Nevertheless, it's now possible in trial to link your Kyma, for example, to S/4HANA Cloud or to SuccessFactors. And that's really interesting, especially I think for SuccessFactors. That would be something that I would really like to take a look into it. Then one news from the Steampunk area, so ABAP in the cloud. Andre Fischer brought a update around his RESTful ABAP programming generator, the RAP generator, with respect to registering and generating business configuration objects with the transport API on the SAP Business Technology Platform. So the point is, on Business Technology Platform, you do not have your classical tools in order to create, store, customizing data. So you use business configuration objects for that, and in order to transport them, you have to register them. And this is now a part of the RAP generator to do so. At least that's my understanding. With that, I would switch to the more generic parts. We have some open source webinar series that I announced, I think, several weeks ago. The first session was this week about a general overview about open source. And within the webinar, there was one thing highlighted that I didn't know about, and that's a community wiki on the SAP community about open source and inner source publications, where you get a curated overview about all the publications around open source and inner source by SAP. That's cool. So take a look at that one, because I think SAP is really gaining speed in the area of open source. I mean, also making it more public that they are heavily engaging with open source. And then one thing that I put here, that kind of fits also to SAP Cloud Platform area, but it's kind of They are now redoing all the things around the cockpit. And now the Cloud Connectors view that vanished several weeks, months ago is now coming back into the dashboard, or the cockpit, how it's called in BTP. Point is, it's only available for feature set B. So if you're still on feature set A, I had a news, I think last week or the week before, that how to make your move from feature set A to feature set B, because otherwise you will not see that one. Okay, then let's switch to the Microsoft part of the house. More general news around Microsoft. They brought a really cool story lab out. That's how they call it. It's called We Live in the Cloud. And it's kind of a virtual walk around through a data center at Microsoft, and also the surroundings of the data center, highlighting things like security and how you really enter the data center, and what checks are done and so on, and how the data center works. It's really nicely made, fully interactive, linking to several videos with more information. Yeah, that's a really cool, nice thing that they brought out there. Then from the serverless area, I have one thing that I would like to highlight, and that's the dev show on serverless development with durable functions in .NET 5. So as you know, the .NET update to 5 was kind of a bit, well, it was tricky for Microsoft, I think, because now .NET behaves more like the other languages with the sidecar approach. And this is now one session about what's new, or what changed with respect to durable functions. Then another topic from the area of serverless, more or less, because Keda, for me, lives there. It's a blog post about why Alibaba Cloud uses Keda as autoscaling infrastructure, perfectly describing the use case for Keda and the shortcomings of the horizontal port autoscaler, and how Alibaba leverages the capabilities of Keda, also in conjunction with other services from other cloud vendors. So that's quite interesting. With that, I'm already at the Microsoft Misc part. So what are news that did not fit elsewhere? Kind of a service information for you out there who are or might be using the ADAL library for authentication against the Active Directory. This one will be ending support on June the 30th, 2022. So it's not too far away. And you have to switch to MSAL. Now, if you are using ADAL, you have to find out which apps are using that. And the Q&A that I referenced highlight how you find out which of your apps are still using ADAL in order to check them and bring them over to the MSAL library, which is now the library that you should use in order to authenticate. Then another really cool post around bringing things together from different areas of Microsoft, from Microsoft 365 and Power. And this is about creating and adding a OneNote tab to your Microsoft Teams channel using Power Automate and the Graph API. Now, per se, that's not no rocket science, but I think that's really helpful when you think about SAP and Microsoft, because you will use the same Graph API, and it's sometimes a bit tricky how to call it, how to use it, especially when it goes into let's say nested calls, because you really have to know how Microsoft 365 structures their world. And this blog post really nicely highlights what steps you have to do in order to get this task done. And I think that's really valid use case. Then one other thing, perhaps also for your IT in your company, and this is, I especially like the title, how to use Power Virtual Agents to simplify IT and unfuck user experience, because it's about how to get a new teams within your company. You can fully automate that, or at least mostly automate that, and have really a great experience from within Teams with a chatbot. And there is no need, absolutely no need to jump to other tools. Like in my company, it is the case in order to get such a tool, such a new Teams team, so to say. So that's really a nice read, and distribute that in your company if you also think user experience can be improved in that area. With that, I am in the section of education and announcements of conferences. The first thing I would like to highlight is DSAG. As you know, there are two big conferences, the Technology Days and the annual conference. And as it was last year due to the pandemic, it will also be this year virtual conference, a remote conference. So there is no DSAG annual meetup, but it's called DSAG Live. And you can now register for that event. So registration is open, and if you can now also get an early bird discount. So if you think it's something that you would like to go to, then be quick and pay less. Then, as you know, this week was the Azure, the first ever Azure Cosmos database conference live, and now you can also take all the sessions on demand if you missed some, like me. They are all available from the Cosmos database conference. You just have to click and you're there. So if you missed something, that's your place to catch up. Then there was another more global conference going on. That's the Global Azure 2021. And there I wanted to highlight one talk because of its relevance, I think, for especially serverless, and that's scaling your data and size of Cosmos DB. Cosmos DB is a NoSQL database, has some magic within it. Let's call it that way. How to structure your data, especially when you're coming from traditional SQL-based data models. How to structure your data, how to scale your how to configure your Cosmos DB, and how to do the scaling. So that's really interesting. And then I also wanted to highlight not too new video series on YouTube, which is called Join Me for 100 Days of Kubernetes, which has now already, let me look, 37 sessions, quite short and crisp sessions, all around the 10-minute mark, about learning Kubernetes. So if you want to start with that, I think that's absolutely a perfect starting point. Then let's switch to the last section for today, developer productivity. There was one announcement that I would like to highlight, and that's the initial preview of the graphical user interface app support for the Windows subsystem for Linux. So that was announced last year during Build. It was already shown, and now it's available for the Insiders channel for Windows 10, where you can get it. It's called WSLG, and it's completely open source. So I also referenced the GitHub repo that also describes the prerequisites on which preview build you must be, and what is recommended in order to have it running. So that's really cool. So you really will have sooner than later a fully functional Linux running within your Windows system. Things that I think 20 years ago nobody would have thought about. And the last post that I would like to highlight today is about developer experience. It's more generic, and it's kind of an interesting read on how now the most prominent companies in the area of cloud now really have to wrap their head around how can we improve developer experience, because things got quite complex when you think about all the services that are available and how can we improve how now developers use them, how they find them, and so on and so forth. So that's really interesting read, more generic, but quite nice read for the weekend. And with that, I'm through all the news for this week that crossed my path. I hope I had something useful for you. I hope I had something interesting for you. And with that, I wish you a nice Friday, a nice weekend, and see you next time. Bye.